We were very lucky to have Marco Kogo of Harbourfront Wealth Management about a month ago. Extraordinary insight into trade activities around the world. Much appreciated, Marco. Today we're going to do a little bit more in-depth analysis, actually look at some slides. It's almost like a lesson. And so welcome back to a Trade Diversification Channel with my esteemed leader, John Treleaven.
I like the way you phrase that, John. No, Marco, it's a great pleasure to welcome you back. As you know, John, Marco's family and Beverly and I have been friends for literally decades. And in the business Marco is in, he's dealing with hundreds of small, medium-sized, some not so small businesses across the country on their financing needs, and therefore gets a very close look at how they are adapting to the marketplace and to the prime ministers and treaties to diversify trade. And it's a great pleasure, Marco, to have you back, this time with some statistics, which I think our viewers will find interesting.
Well, thanks for having me back. And I did have several slides here ready for you.
Yeah, well, it's in part aspirational, but it's actually a very practical and a necessary goal for Canadian businesses, even though by looking into other markets, they do one way or another increase the risk profile.
Yes.
But I think you and I and John are confident that there are lots of excellent markets for Canadian products around the world. I note that the two-way trade between the Philippines and Canada now is over $3 billion a year. When I was there, Philippine exports to Canada went over $1 billion for the first time. Well, they've more than doubled since.
Mhm.
So there's lots of great countries to do business with, but we're very interested in your numbers, Mark.
Oh,
Very interested.
absolutely. Yeah, so their trade is diversifying across the world, and I'm happy to share a slide with you. So trade diversification in global markets. So here's a chart. Basically, in economics and finance school, you're taught when there's a tariff, it's going to cause a recession or a depression. But as you can see here, the trade did go negative, but it was very shallow. It did rebound quite a bit, and people were expecting it to be a lot deeper than this. So it really surprised the market, but it just shows how dynamic trade has developed and evolved over time. Okay?
Yeah, which among other things proves the point that trade is not a zero-sum game. There's something
Absolutely.
called demand pull.
Yes,
No business can sell to a market where there isn't need and trust and
absolutely.
price, of course. Yeah.
Yes, that's correct. And then the next one is just highlights the Chinese exports to the US plummeted. And you can see the difference in the trend between the United States, Europe, Latin America, and Southeast Asia. In our last conversation, we discussed about the donut, and here
Yes.
is exactly some of this is happening. As you can see, Southeast Asia and Latin America, the volume of trade there from China and other countries similar, European Union, India, has increased the volume there, and while the U.S. and China exports have declined significantly here.
Well, I think that the trade negotiator from Global Affairs who wrote in the Toronto Globe and Mail several months ago about the donut effect
Mhm.
that trade protectionism would inevitably impose on the global marketplace, you've just demonstrated.
Yep. And you can see the trend here with the emerging market is rapidly growing, and we believe that that slope will continue to speed up actually quite a bit, especially for Southeast Asia and Latin America. Philippines, in the context of the Philippines, there is a there's a Canadian Philippine trade agreement happening. They're working on it right now.
A free trade agreement,
Yeah,
yes,
free trade
absolutely.
agreement, as well as there's a lot of work being done prior in December of 2025. It's called the Pax Silica. It's basically the diversification of the supply chain for critical minerals. That is a program that was originated by the United States, Japan, Australia, and other founding members. And in the Philippines, that has a very, very huge impact on our transition away from the call center business as well
Yeah.
as from overseas foreign workers.
And let's face it, given the huge diaspora of Filipinos living in Canada, including yourself and your family, Canadian businesses who are not as familiar as they might like to be with the Philippines, they can turn to a neighbor.
Yes.
They can turn to one of thousands of Philippine companies in Canada
Yes.
who are strengthening those links. It's fantastic.
I think the free trade agreement between Canada and the Philippines is going to strengthen quite a bit. So
Absolutely.
I'm waiting for all the details of it. But of course, as you know, that there one-fifth of the global oil and LNG goes through the Strait of Hormuz, and
Yeah.
you can see here there the drop that occurred because of the Iranian war. But the long-term effects of it from a global and economic perspective, the world doesn't like to be blackmailed in terms of their power or energy. So you're going to see the world really diversify away from the Strait of Hormuz. Many countries in Southeast Asia and Latin America are already diversifying their energy mix.
Yes.
And that's going to be first initially is going to be trying to implement as fast as they can brownfield projects right beside refineries that will help them refine other maybe light crude or whatever it is. They're going to start investing significantly more on renewable energy. They're recommissioning some oil just in the temporary, I mean, some coal in temporary. And then in the long run, nuclear will be a huge part to change the energy mix.
Yeah.
So it's very, very important that going forward, the energy mix of many countries are going to diversify as well, and huge investments happening. So I think it's going to, in the long run, um, not very good for Iran in regard to what they've done in the Straits.
Yeah, indeed.
Hmm. Despite all the bad news, the betting odds in regard to recession in the United States, despite the oil prices and energy prices rising, have gone down. It would peaked over here and started going down. So we do not see a recession happening in the United States. Labor markets are still very strong, and the AI boom has really helped the economy and grow GDP, which I'll have a slide for you later. Okay?
Yeah, very interesting.
The global financial conditions have already improved in terms of the financial interest rates and the liquidity of financing. In very, very short period, you'll see the largest IPOs happening in the market with OpenAI and many other AI related companies. And they are going to be oversubscribed. So there's lots of liquidity in the market, and there is no more global tightening since the Iran war.
So
Okay.
when are the three of us going public?
Global economic growth momentum is surprisingly good, especially for the countries that are less reliant on the Middle East. For example, the United States. However, countries like who are more reliant on energy imports for like Korea, Japan, and maybe New Zealand and other Sri Lanka would be another one, are suffering from the higher energy costs, but still the momentum is quite strong, really driven by the trade diversification trend.
How quickly can those energy supply chains adjust?
So yeah, the energy supply chain is going to take a long time to adjust. However, there is a huge momentum from governments who are changing the laws. So they're changing regulation, changing all as fast as possible, and also supporting it with financial instrument to diversify as quickly as possible. But in the Middle East, those in Bahrain and in Kuwait, some of their facilities were hit. Specifically in Bahrain, there was a one facility was hit that was a cold for LNG. In Saudi, UAE, again, they were hit. It's going to take a long time for them to repair them. I believe it's going to be anywhere from 3 to 5 years to repair those types of facilities.
Yeah.
So, however, because of technology, you're going to see a lot more countries changing the way they generate power. And I think renewable energy will help with the intermittent power, but the base load power, which is geothermal, hydro, and other sources, are going to have to fill that really quickly. And then nuclear will be in the long term. So, the United States are signing a lot of agreements to be suppliers of nuclear around the world, including the Philippines.
Yeah, great.
The other good news is corporate earnings are still very strong. Q1 corporate earnings was very positive. Q2 again going to be another record. So profitability is going to continue to improve, and you can see that in the stock market. One of the things I wanted to share with you today was the artificial intelligence capex boom. It's really provided 0.5% of GDP in the United States. Microsoft, Google, Amazon are spending hundreds of billions of dollars to build out capacity and resources, and all that spending is on infrastructure is also going to services. So you can imagine that's really the tailwind in the economy. So the AI is a secular growth for the world, and they compare it as a to the Industrial Revolution, but times 10.
Yeah, well, John and I are worried, but we might be put out of work by all this.
Once we put
So
our avatars in there, maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the AI gap expanding is transforming the economy in the Philippines. The Pax Silica is an agreement between the United States, Japan, and the Philippines to diversify out of rare earths in China, in the Philippines, because there are lots of minerals there. This Pax Silica program is providing full vertical financing and support for extracting critical illness through to manufacturing to the end product. And it's going to generate about 1 million jobs in the Philippines. So the people who are working in call centers and other sectors, as they get retrained, will start moving into the manufacturing. And we're building a green city up in the north called Clark, where there's already an airport there, and there's 4,000 acres that we've given to the United States, leased to the United States to build out the assembly of semiconductors.
Yeah, apart from having to meet increasing demand for rare earth minerals and exotic products, what we really have to do is shift a significant portion of the refining of rare earths out of China into other jurisdictions who will welcome the refining process.
Yeah, so the strategy is to locate the large reserves, build out the power and water in those areas,
Yeah,
and then start as close as possible to the source, start building light industry and manufacturing. So it's going to
absolutely.
be a value add for the Philippines. We're going
Oh,
to go from a low margin to a mid margin type of
absolutely.
yeah, so we're going to be moving slightly up on the value chain, which will boost the economy. So there's a Luzon economic corridor. So the Luzon is the largest land in the Philippines, and if you want to connect grids, it's easier to do in the larger land up in the north. So it's going to connect former U.S. base Subic
Yeah,
to Clark, which is the new economic and technology hub, through to Manila, which is the capital and legal hub, and into the another port out in Batangas. So this is a corridor that's going to build the future of economic growth in the Philippines.
yeah. And just let me take off on that point, we mentioned the diaspora in Canada, which provides just huge knowledge and relationships and whatnot. The intriguing thing to me was the fact that two of Canada's largest insurance companies, Sun Life and Manulife, are all over the Philippines and have been. I think they started there like in 1896. So the Canadian presence on the ground in the Philippines is far larger than even the trade statistics would tell you.
Yes,
And what you're saying now is the Philippines is moving from the era of the call center as a key driver to something that is, in fact, more tangible.
yes. So artificial intelligence is structurally changing the call center business.
Yeah,
It's going to be, it's going to disappear soon. The Philippine economy is shifting. We're moving a lot of the workers into light manufacturing, but before we can do that, we have to build the infrastructure, the power, the water, and then the ports. So
yeah,
we're doing all of that, and Manulife and Sun Life and many other Canadian firms. One of the reasons there is going to be a Canadian free trade with the Philippines is specifically to access the opportunities for this Pax Silica that is occurring in the
sure.
Luzon economic zone recurring. So we're going to be hopefully partnering up with Canadian mining companies, the Canadian technologies, Canadian quantum computing, and they will then get integrated into it. So Canada is not a member of Pax Silica yet, but other G7 countries are, and I suspect that Canada will join that Pax Silica in the future.
And what you're really saying is that there's another segment of the donut that's under
Hmm.
full construction mode.
Yes, so the trade diversification is also including supply chain diversification. There's going to America does not want to be reliant on Chinese rare earths. So now they're diversifying it right across, and many of its allied countries are going to benefit from this as they expand around the world.
Absolutely.
Okay. The other thing that we've noticed is the productivity since the introduction of ChatGPT was released, the commercial version. The productivity has increased around the world, and so many we are expecting that, especially this in America and in Southeast Asia, Latin America, and Europe, in the emerging parts of Europe, will have productivity growth significantly. So there is another chart here where we're seeing productivity growth. Canada is still lagging on productivity. It's because many of the investments went into real estate, but now that real estate is a little bit in a slump. Some of the capital is going back, and with Prime Minister Carney's investments, long-term investments, we'll see a shift in the economy to more productive
Absolutely.
sectors. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So yeah, so that's some of the charts that I'm showing you. The other one of obviously for my team, when we look at wealth management or a multifamily office, most people think of just RSPs and TFSA, but because we do a full family office, multifamily office service, we offer more than just RSP TFSAs. We work with clients to build pension plans, retirement compensation agreements, buy sell agreements. We have many consulting firms or engineering firms that'll have five different partners. One of them may leave or may get sick or pass away. You need to sort that out. So that would be the buy-sell agreements and corporate planning. So those are some of those services available through multifamily.
Marco, thank you. Thank you so
Yeah.
very much for that really interesting
Yeah.
presentation. Those slides,
Hmm.
I'm sure many of our viewers will want to download and use in their own presentations. That's very interesting, don't you think, John?
What is startling about it is the perception that's been developed that we're in very difficult times. The statistics seem to indicate otherwise,
Yes.
and I'm quite well, startled a bit, to be honest with
Yes.
you. There's a very positive picture being painted there. I had some fun around a technical recession being determined for Canada just within the last week, and it was maybe by 0.02% or something. And the comment that I made, and I'd like to know your reaction, Marco, is that considering all that the US has tried to do to us, ostensibly taken a bat to us,
Hmm.
I think we're doing pretty good considering we've had to deal with what our prime minister calls a rupture.
Hmm.
Very curious your reaction to that.
So the former government under the Trudeau government, they were more about transferring wealth, right? But this new government with the Carney government is about nation building. So they are spending and borrowing a lot of money and spending on capital investments, which
Mm-hmm.
should create a multiplier effect for the
Absolutely.
economy in the future. So obviously he's well informed in economics and finance matters. It does take time to build out those policies, and you will see you're starting to see um, many of the it's a methodical process that he's following, right?
Yeah.
So in regard to this transition that we're going through, we are gonna have a little bit of bumps along the way. It's just a slight technical recession. However, underneath that, there is a huge momentum building. One of the ones that the government's trying to do is create a fund for small to medium-sized businesses to create liquidity and venture capital. So we have a private pool within our firm that offers capital to larger late stage. It's always been a gap in Canada for the venture capital, and that will help boost that. But really, where in the BDC and the Export Development Bank as well will be creating programs or already had created programs to help exports. So those will hopefully diversify our trade. But with regard to the United States, their strategy to enforce maximum pressure with tariffs and then negotiate with leverage and then settle down somewhere in the middle hasn't really worked because of the court rulings. So he's had to take it back now, Trump, with a because of the court rulings with this tariff, and now and he can see that they can see the world is shifting, specifically Europe and Canada and other allies are shifting their trade, and Canada and China is really one of the most benefactors of this trade diversification, as you can see what's happening with Canada and China. So I believe the Americans are going to adapt and change given the court rulings, but despite all the short-term challenges, I am very bullish on Canadian technology exports. We just need to build out more infrastructure and build out financial frameworks. And when I say lending at a lower interest rate, more competitive programs that will really, really encourage Canadian business to expand.
Last week, a, a large trade show, uh, knowledge show happened in Toronto called CanSec, gathering of defense contractors, defense service providers. And as you know, there's a massive amount of spending going on. There's about 10 to 12,000 people attending that event. This year there was 23,000.
Yes,
So right out of the gate, you can start to see this sort of multiplier effect and excitement around this.
yes.
And what came out of that, I've had numerous discussions with folks in Victoria who've come from that event, is that if we are to achieve the goals, John often references those in our discussions of increased trade with other countries, increased trade agreements. We need like a sea change of talented people in our economy. People
Hmm.
trained properly, new tradespeople. We don't have that.
Hmm.
This could all come to a grinding halt if we don't figure out the skilled trades part fast.
Yes,
And so there's
Yeah.
a lot of emphasis on that right now.
Yeah.
yes.
And a part of that has to do with lowering all internal barriers to trade and labor mobility in the country.
Yes.
I mean, why? Well, we know why they're in place. It's history and all that. But I compared our supply management and dairy before the Senate Committee on International Trade. I said maintaining supply management in dairy is like asking Bernie Surin, one of Canada's top sprinters, to run in the 100-yard dash in the Olympics wearing boots made in Canada because they're made in Canada. Like, no, we got it. Bernie's got to be able to run unencumbered as hard as he can for that 100 yards. Well, so many of these interprovincial barriers and the labor market rigidity in the country is like those boots on a Canadian Olympic sprinter. They make no sense.
That's
I
a
would
that
100% agree with you that the skills of the Canadian people are not fully utilized given these interprovincial trade barriers. But there's a lot of talent here.
Oh, yes.
There's a
well,
lot of
I think
technical
Marco,
talent.
we're going to have to see um, a innovative approaches to immigration and start to tap into the enormously talented populations elsewhere, specifically the Philippines. This has been really very, very appreciated. We will need to talk to you again. So thank
Absolutely.
you very
Anytime you can
much.
bring me back. Yeah. Happy to discuss more as the world evolves. In the next couple of months, you will see the hopefully a settlement between Iran and the United States. And as energy goes down, you'll see a different economy emerge as well.